So I'm talking about growth mindset, and I introduced the other session basically saying how you and I had a conversation about there are certain things that we just kind of think organically happen, and the more we've been involved in PL, we realize that it really does boil down to intention, and growth mindset is very much one of those that takes intention on our part, and then intentional teaching to help the kids come up with that as well. So we're going to talk about what is some ways at the beginning of the year or whenever you need to, as I would call reboot, to make sure that those foundations of growth mindset are there. And what words and language do you need to be using? So it's interesting when I walk around all the different schools. You know, you've heard that power of yet, but that alone is not growth mindset. There's so many, and going in all of the different schools I go in, there is a ton of schools that have the bulletin boards up and the posters up and all of that, but if they're just up, that's not growth mindset. It has to be, I said, it's not just a poster or a quote, you know, in the classroom. You actually have to, I mean, it's fine if that's what's up, but at the same time, if you haven't instilled that culture, it's really not growth mindset. So, the ways that I started with that at the beginning of the year is 3 different ways, but along with them, and rather than just using those, I also made sure that I took time to teach it, to discuss it, to share out all of different ways so that it became an expectation just like any other piece of curriculum in my classroom. So it wasn't just read the book, here we go, but we actually did some activities with it along with it. Videos, there are so many different videos out there available for growth mindset. Some of them are in the notes on the QR code that we have over there, but there's also just a lot. If you put it in, you're gonna go to just a stream of them from YouTube. And everything from, if you're a science teacher talking about the actual science of a brain, to, you know, the emotions behind it, down to a cartoon version that was very simple to understand for my first graders. So along with that, also the other videos in the first of elementary math, and I don't know about middle school, but in that first week or so, it talks about the week of inspirational math. Mm-hmm. Well, those videos are growth mindset. So whether I did the actual math lessons or not, but the videos for the growth mindset and talking about how different people do things different ways and appreciating that and the work ethic behind continuing to try and that kind of stuff are definitely, that's some of the videos that I found some value in as well. So trade books and novels. If you're a language arts or a teacher, then obviously you have the novels that you can do, and almost all of the novels that we teach have somebody doing something in a struggling situation, so that obviously is opportunity. But if you're a science teacher and you don't have the opportunity to do those novels, consider using some of the shorter trade books. So even if you are a middle school or high school person, consider using some of the books that I put out, and I picked this one basically because we all have background knowledge of this one that I'm going to share in a minute. So doing those, Carrie and I talked about having a Mr. Rogers moment where you put your sweater on and you read the book, and your kids could actually, you know, they're going to think it's hokey, but at the same time you might be able to get a message across. So have you been Mr. Rogers yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
I need a book.
I got you. All right, and of course posters and quotes. Again, in Carrie's classroom, she found some really cool ones that were celebrities through the ages. So we were talking about with social studies, even with her timeline, talking about the different celebrities through the ages, but that all had some kind of struggle that they had to get over and be able to grow to get past that. So using those intertwined in your curriculum. So I loved, of course, Carol Dweck is the big guru of growth mindset. And this to me is the simplest, but also the most telling quote she has lots of big, but to me, becoming is better than being. You know, I can be strong, I can be smart, I can be happy, but I also can become that, and that's a never ending. It's an always seeking. So I liked that one the best. So in encouraging growth mindset in your classroom has a lot to do with the praise and how we praise students and what we praise them for. So being careful not to just throw out great job, because that's a finite, to be able to say, I like the way you, and praise that process rather than the end product. So here are some very concrete examples of how to praise your students, and then there's even more out there. This resource, the Mindset Kit, is one of the resources that's on the page that we'll share with you, that's in the slide deck. But there is several lessons and organizers and things that are in that just have a whole, probably more growth mindset lessons than you would ever be able to do. But at the same time, if it's something you need to revisit, there's probably some fresh ideas, some things that you can adapt for your classroom very easily. So I wanted to share this book, and basically I said, you know, this is one. So we all know this guy, and we all know that he had a pretty big incident happen. All right? So I won't read the book to you, but I'm going to just kind of share quickly the story of, or the pictures, so that you can see that, yes, Humpty Dumpty had a rather, you know, depressing incident happen to him. And of course, he shares that at the beginning. And he admits that he got put back together. I love how it's the King's Hospital. So, but of course, he came out of it, you know, scarred. So he had a struggle. By the way, just in case you never knew, the reason he was up on that wall is because he likes to watch the birds. He feels close to the birds, so that is his. So I never knew that. So
The birds.
Yes, the birds. So there you go. But even though that's how he felt, he couldn't draw himself to get back up there. So it was even keeping him from some of his very favorite things, all because, you know, his incident.
Frosted Flakes. Sorry.
So he, you know, even started to, you know, eventually, you know, he was passing by the wall, but he never would be a part of it. That's as close as he could get to the bird. So it's very sad how so then he decides, I'm going to work on this. So I love, and of course, a great way to talk about the different plans that you can make. What are you going to do to get over that setback? He decides he's going to construct the bird so that at least part of him can get up near the birds. And everything's great until what happened. Oops, it went over the wall. So now he's stuck again. So how are you going to get past that? It motivated him to. Now, little ones I would stop and we'd predict and all that kind of stuff, because I could not have predicted this ending. So just so you know, so he gets up there and he realizes, you know what, I'm no longer afraid. This is not a big deal. But being an egg, he starts cracking it up. But then what happens? He is a bird.
Oh.
He's an egg. So,
He grew.
yes, so very good. And he learned how to fly.
Okay, I feel dumb because that took me a minute.
No.
He was attacked by a bird.
He was taken out. A bird wiped him out again.
But then he threw up, came down, and hit him on the head.
So, there you go. Anyway, so of course there's lots of ways you could talk about this with your kids, but one thing that I want to think about as far as teachers, so what would you say to praise Humpty Dumpty for what he did to?
I'm really glad you got over your fear. Happy you became a bird.
Way to grow.
And not
Way to
attacked-
grow.
Way to grow.
And not attacked by the bird. I'm glad you weren't attacked by the bird.
Way to be creative.
He wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
Kept on. Well, he conquered his fear. I think with kids, a lot of times it's fear that holds them back as much as it's a fear that holds me back. It's a fear for them. So I think conquering a fear is a good thing.
He didn't just put his head down and do nothing.
He started out that way.
Yeah. He didn't
So-
stay that way.
No, he didn't stay that way. And there's just all kinds of ways that you could share share the thoughts in your classroom. Like I can think of, we talked about using a Padlet or a Menti to, what are the words that you heard in the book that you could, that would have encouraged, that showed encouraging or showed that he continued to put the effort in to grow rather than stay, where he was. To me, this is the most depressing little picture right there.
Right.
So,
Well, I think it's important too to point out to kids that, everyone has their, I call them their ebbs and flows.
Mhm.
Like everyone has their ups and downs, but it's what we do in the downs that matter most. And what he did when he was down was he thought of what else he could do.
I mean, he wasn't satisfied staying down.
No.
Started that way, but then he wasn't
And
satisfied.
you do stay down sometimes. Like sometimes you have to stay in that place to kind of figure it out.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of neat too, because he wasn't looking for anybody else's opinions or he was after it for himself,
Yes,
which is kind of what they need to do.
Yeah.
They have to own it and decide that I'm gonna do this.
yeah, not
I'm gonna
because,
learn.
not because the teacher's gonna give me the grade, not
Yeah.
because it's gonna make mom happy, not
Yeah.
because, Very good. And then, one of the ways that I got the idea, I love this book, but another that was just a fun idea, but they had the brains on the stick. And then when you heard, of course, this is a more elementary way to do this, but this idea came from the Office of Early Learning. But when you heard a word in the book that encouraged growth or encouraged trying or encouraged effort, you were to pop your brain up, to show that your brain
That's
was growing. But I could see, like I said, doing a Menti or doing a Padlet and having them on their device as you're reading, what's the words, and it would be really interesting to have the Mentimeter, blacked out, but then pop it up at the end and see what words managed to grow. Because that would be very interesting, because then those are the words that mean growth and progress to your students. And so those would be the words that would be good to use to encourage that growth and progress in your students. So, there you go. Want to push?
The first thing I put in here is just when we arrive, and I know you guys have, periods, but if there's time, with us, we have more time in the morning, because our kids actually can come in at 7:25, and our bell doesn't actually ring until 7:55, so some of them are there for 30 minutes. But I'm actually going to adjust this one to where I put on Monday, students choose the station they would like to start in, and I'm actually going to start choosing that for them. Because what's happening is there can only be 5 at a station. They already know, and they're making a plan, so they're staying with the same people every week. So to mix it up, I'm gonna start playing with the sticks, letting them be with new people, talk to new people. But every station that I have is just designed for the students to interact, and I'm gonna go through the different stations. But the way I do it is, I have a clip chart that I'm gonna show you, and every day when they come in, they rotate to the next station. And the clip chart looks like this. So you can see to where the first 2 are just directions on what to do when they first get here. But my first option, I just called it Makerspace. It's super simple, easy to do. All I do, and because I have tons of loose leaf paper, I just put out some loose leaf paper, scissors, glue, colored pencils, and crayons, and I just got it all grouped together. So when they first come in, I just put that on one of the tables, and I didn't know how that one would go. That one's really been cool. I mean, they've been really creative. The things they'll create, cut out, glue together. It's really neat. The second one they go to is games. So that's super simple as well. I just bought a pack of cards, Uno, this new game called Blitz. I'm getting Jenga. Just some little things that are easy for them to tear down, set up. They know where it's at. They know how to go get it. The third one is, it's read, but in the reading center, we're lucky we have iPads, so I've got a couple reading apps downloaded that they can look at together, and a couple like the Ripley's books. They love those. Where they can look through the Guinness World Record. So even though it's a read station, they can interact with each other and look with each other. I do put in an online station, which of course is where they all want to start and stay. They only get to go once a week. When I do the online station though, so when kids are coming in, we all stand at the door as they're coming in. They have to sit at the table with their screens facing me so I can see where they're at. And I give them a list of sites they can go to. I do let them go to Cool Math if they want, which is where they most time choose. Or they can, a lot of them I started picking some of the other sites we do in class, so like the Quizlet. They like the card games that they can play to study, Studies Weekly. They like the bonus sources, or they like making their rat caves. But those are some of their options. And the white table is just like that table, probably what you have in your classroom. They love to draw on it. So that's just an opportunity where they get back there, they'll play hangman or dots. Some of them just draw pictures with the markers.
They were
But
drawing hurricane patterns today.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. You never know. Some of it's just an outlet just to wiggle for a while. But that's the different ones. But like I said, the change I am going to make is you can see where like they've been doing it. Whenever Monday rolls around, I'm going to mix them up. And it's just a good chance for them to get to know new people, speak to new people. But that's what it looks like when they first come in. And honestly, I didn't know how it would go. I have not done this before, but I have really liked how it went. It's been really structured. They know where they're at. We set the expectations for it.
I think that's the same way that Wendy monitors her group, like her station rotation is like a
Yeah, a
like
clip chart.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, you could, and it's super simple, and then you can just see, and if there's not 5 in each, and I got lucky because I have 25 kids, so that worked out perfect. But you can just count them and make sure that you got 5 in each, make sure they're rotating.
Yeah.
And on Mondays, it's a good way, well, it was, before I will start doing it, it's a good way to check attendance on Mondays, see who hadn't moved a clip. But what we do after that is after the announcements, they clean up stations. We go ahead and just get out any materials we need because we go to specials at 8:15. So we got a 15-minute gap. So I go ahead and we get any materials. So if they need laptops, their weather charts, notebooks, whatever, get that out. And then we do our morning meeting. So I always start just with like a simple icebreaker. And it's getting harder now that the days are going on. We'll have to find some new ones. But I'll just say get in line, shortest to tallest. Or get in line by your last names. And that just gives them a little chance to communicate. So after they do that, I put like groups too. Favorite holiday, favorite season, favorite color. I mean, there's tons you can pick from. We get in a circle, and we all stand together around. And the way the circle works is I always give them, I call it the menu for the day. I just tell them the expectations, what they can expect. I'll go over like, okay, like today I told them when we get back for science, we're looking at weather fronts. Then after that, when we go into social studies, we're continuing European exploration, just kind of giving them a layout, what to expect, just set the tone for the day for specials. But what's pretty cool is after that, we do a leaderboard. So we introduce that, and I just leave it on one of my whiteboards. And if kids see another student doing anything, they can write their name down on the board, and the next day in the morning meeting, they get shout outs to each other. We do the 7 habits. So a lot of it's really this year based around the 7 habits. You know, did they see somebody being proactive or beginning with the end in mind? So it's pretty cool to hear them, give shout outs to each other. After that, I put this about the remaining time. That's just their time in the circle. So we have a talking stick and a leader. And basically they cross their arms if they want to talk that day. And the floor is theirs. I mean, I let them, if they want to tell us about their weekend or sometimes even something that's bothering them or a success they've had, that's their time to do that. And one speaks that time, but if they didn't get to talk the day before and they wanted to, they get to put their thumbs up. So that lets the person know that's choosing, like, they didn't get to talk the day before to go to them. But the morning meeting is really cool. It's just a good way to start off the day. It's a good way to set the tone right from the start.
So I've seen, like, with teachers that have less class time,
Yeah.
don't have all day, they choose a day, like #Motivational Mondays.
Yeah.
And that's their day that they do, like, they don't necessarily call it a morning meeting, but like their collaboration time for things like that.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
I have teachers at Carver that do circles, and they'll do it like once a week.
And I'll tell you something else I'm gonna go over here. That's a really cool idea that is a lot less time. But I'll tell it after I tell the clock partners how you can do it. So we started this year, we're calling it clock partners. And all they do is in their leader notebook, they just literally draw a circle in 12, 3, 6, and 9. And so what you do is you have them line up and they face somebody. And of course they're gonna face their friend. So then after they line up, then you tell them to rotate twice. So then they're all right, because now they've got somebody different. So after you move them down twice, that first person is their 12 o'clock partner. So they're getting somebody new, and we practice how to shake hands, how to look at somebody, introduce yourself. And then you just rotate them through, so they'll have a 12, 3, 6, and 9. But that's just a cool way, and you can switch it up, you know, every quarter, every month, give new clock partners. And it's really cool. It's easy too, because I know you're talking about like partners, like tell them to coach with their partner. You can say, okay, get with your 3 o'clock partner. So it gets them up with somebody new. That was such a simple thing, but after we tried it this year, I was like, that was something really simple that's really been cool. But another thing too that we do, because I switch, like we have a morning group where I have a little bit more time, but then I have an afternoon group, and basically right after lunch, the class is completely flipped. I get a whole new group of students, but right before we get going, it takes like 2 minutes. I'll tell them the partner to get with, and they take 30 seconds to talk. You have partner A and B. My partner A has 30 seconds just to tell them about what they've done that week. You tell them about their plans for the weekend. You know, you can kind of set the tone. And the other partner is not allowed to speak. They can only listen. And then they switch it. So that's a cool little way, too, in the mornings, just to do something quick. I really like doing it, getting the tone set. And it's cool, too, to, like, talk to them if you have, like, an odd number. It's harder than you think to talk to a kid for 30 straight seconds. And it's hard to listen for 30 straight seconds without, like, wanting to put your input in. So that's our clock partners. Like I said, it's super simple. But it's been really effective this year. I've really liked it. And it's been really organized, too. A simple thing I do, I took out desks and put in tables. So I just thought I'd put that in there. I've got 6 long tables. I've really liked it. It's helped the organization, too, so they're not shoving things in their desk. But that's elementary, where they still have desks and they're trying to shove things in. And I just put some areas around the room to where when we clean up, they're putting up notebooks, folders. They know to stack them, where their shelves are. So it's really helped, like I said, organization-wise, but it's cool too anytime you're doing anything just for the communication aspect, the collaboration. And that's just what I put for that. The last thing I thought I'd put, and this just can be anybody, is just our expectations. So these next slides we did every day for the first 2 weeks of school. So 10 straight days we went through these slides, and I'm gonna do it just like we did, and they helped come up with the classroom, which was fun. But basically we came up with 4 simple things so they can earn 4 points a day just for doing these 4 things. 1, we talked about being respectful to each other, and we just talked about what that looked like, and I'll just run through these bullets real quick. This was a list they came up with, was being kind, helping others out. And I always stress to them too when they would talk about that. I'm like, that's why you're in groups. You're here to lift each other up, to help each other out. We talked about the respecting each other's opinions. And this was a big one. And this one's hard, and it's something I've had to make sure that I'm really staying on, is when the others are speaking, I know not speaking over them, but looking at the person. And I'm bad for it too, them wanting to look down, draw, talk to somebody. So that's been a cool one that we've been working hard on. This is such an elementary term, the level 0. So we have voice levels 0, 1, 2, and 3. And that was just one of ours where if somebody's speaking or if we're giving instructions to be on level 0 and listening. Okay, and then following directions was the third easy one. We talked about what that looked like, and staying on task. So we went through this every day, just making sure I went through my system of how they can earn their points, but also that's what this is. What would happen if they don't, if they're not doing one of these things correctly. Go over what would happen, how they fill out the response log, and they don't earn, I should say, do not earn one of their points. And then after that, and if they earn them all, they get a prize. But the last thing I put in this year, it's been really helpful. Something I do want to do, and I'm actually working on with somebody at my school, is a response, like how to respond to somebody, like response stems. How to talk to somebody if you agree with them, if you don't agree, if you have a question. But we went through this. Just if somebody's talking to you, first we just talk about staying on task. Making sure, because that's a big one for them. They're not getting distracted, talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. The listening without interrupting. And we practice that, like I said, with that 30-minute or the 30-second talk. Really working on A's talking, not B. Okay, and then we talked about already some of the ways they could respond. I really like your idea. I won't go through them all, but we just went through these. These are possible ways you could respond to somebody. Okay, and then we just talked about being respectful to each other. And then this is what I was talking about, the 30 seconds. What they're going to do this week. You not talk at all while your partner's speaking. You just have to listen. So we practice that every day for 2 weeks, and we still do it, especially in B block each day. Cool. And, oh, this was a big one. We play a lot of games. So whatever the expectations, how to play games with each other, which I like. Just between giving your best effort always, how to be respectful to your teammates, others win, and if you do win, how to be humble. And I think that's it for mine, guys.
All right, so I'm presenting my cheek to cheek. I'm 8th grade language arts, so I was going to do reading conferences, but I realized more than that my kids needed time to talk, and it seemed like last year they wanted to constantly go to guidance for anything and everything, and so since my last name is Cheek, I decided, play on words. So when our students took the panorama survey from guidance, or the district, the biggest thing that our school scored the highest percentage on negatively was the sense of belonging, and they felt like they didn't have a sense of belonging. And so as a SIT, we talked about, well, what does that mean? Does that mean they're not connecting to the school because they're not in sports, because they're not in a club? Is it because they don't think the teachers like them? So we just started coming up with all of these ideas of why they don't feel like they belong, or why that's the largest percentage. And so we developed a few things, and then some of us individually developed things in our classroom. And so my plan was I wanted to create a community through reading conferences, because reading conferences for kids can be intimidating and sometimes boring and distracting, and I don't want to do, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about. They check in once a week with an assigned number, and it's mental health. So they all have different numbers for each class. They come in, they take their magnet, and they decide if they're great, they put their number there. If they're struggling, they can put it on the cheek-to-cheek box, or they can put it in a dark place. And so during reading conferences, I talk with the students if they choose cheek-to-cheek. And no one knows if I'm talking cheek-to-cheek with them or if I'm doing a reading conference, because we're off sitting at the introductory table or somewhere else in the room. And so we start off with, bring your book. And we sort of pretend like we're talking about the book. And then I just ask them, what's going on? And overall, these are 4 definite results that I've seen, or emotions that I've seen from my students, whether it's anger, fear, happiness, sadness. I thought it would take a good quarter for anyone to even put anything on cheek to cheek, and I certainly didn't think it would be any of my 14-year-old boys. 3 students were crying, 2 of which were boys in class. So they are aware 30 other kids in class, and they're crying. 2 of them was drama about friends, and one was out of crying, and one was it was superficial, but still, for me, and that was the first week of school. So for them to feel like you want to open up to a teacher you have no clue about. Fighting with a dad, I taught her brother 2 years ago, so just her concerns about living with him. One of them, she lost her aunt during 9/11. She obviously didn't know her at all, and they were watching a documentary, and it just upset her that some kids were being disrespectful. And then yesterday, I did cheek to cheek, and I only had one, but his was just feeling, I'm overwhelmed. I'm a good student. I usually am able to keep up, and now I feel like I can't keep up, and my grades are slipping, and I don't know what to do about it. And again, so I've actually had more boys than girls. I've had boys repeat each week, just wanting to talk about. So we came up with strategies for him, the one that lost her aunt, and how upset she was about that social studies class. So telling her, write a letter. Ask your social studies teacher to read it out in class so that you can feel better. The one about moving, his brother I had last year, they are full of anxiety, and their parents don't believe in any of that. They feel as that they have no anxiety, and they just need to toughen it up. And they are the 2 most sensitive boys I've ever taught. They're going to be like awesome husbands when they grow up, because they're just really, really sensitive. But their parents are like, no, they're going to tough it up. I'm like, you don't have tough boys. So they're moving, and he was anxious because he's like, my dad's at home, and he's moving my stuff in my room, and I can't cope with that. And so he's like, I can't concentrate. I can't do what I need to do at school because I know my father's at home, and there's movers, and they're messing with stuff. the drama about friends again. One was superficial, never talked about it again, but the other one, she's like, the friend is in here, and I'm really struggling with her, and we used to be best friends. And yeah, I used to be really mean, but I'm trying to be nice. And she's like, I don't want to do anything, I just want to be able to talk it out. And I think she talked loud enough for that friend who was sitting like 5 feet away, heard it. And today they paired up and they were talking. And then the ones that were crying, one, come to find out, he cut himself last year and highly depressive. And he is like superstar on the soccer team. And it's amazing. And he's like, I'm starting to feel anxious and I need to tell my mom because I need to go back to my therapist. And the other one was like, I tried to commit suicide last year and I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and my dad doesn't understand. And so again, just talking about them opening up, but also just strategies. And so it's exhausting, but it's refreshing. And it's certainly surprising that again, they want to talk to me. The anticipation is really high about who am I going to get this week and what are they going to want to talk about. There's been 2 students that have been in the dark place and one has repeated twice. And so I've slid him a note. My co-teacher has given him a note like, hey, we've seen you twice on here. If you want to talk about it, let us know. He hasn't. I also send notes to the team if it impacts their academic success, even just so they could, or potentially impact it, so they get a list of all the kids. And here's what's going on, and here's what we need to be aware of. And don't drill them about this. And if they're putting their head down today, this is why. And students, they completed a survey today, or actually yesterday. And one was, what do you like about my class? What do you not like, or what do you wish would change? And the bottom is, how can I help you this year? And there were several that talked about, I like that you let us talk about our feelings. It seems like you care what we're doing. And so I'm hoping that just giving them that time to talk about whatever, it'll help them, feel like they belong on our team, they belong to somebody, they could talk to somebody. So, and this is Octi, talked about this at the last one. So, I've got a student, it's interesting, she hasn't come up to do a cheek to cheek, but she'll tell us in a heartbeat when she's feeling depressed or anxious. And so she knows where Octi is, and so after lunch or whatever, she knows to go grab him, and she just sits and pets, rubs him, sits in the lap. I even offered to one of my boys, I was like, oh, we have stress balls. I have Octi over there. You can be the first one in, slide it, get it. No one would notice. And so it's just one, but it's there. So anyway, it's awesome, and I'm glad, and I'm opening it up, especially talking about, guidance doesn't want to open up fully to, the school because it'll just create a lot. I haven't even shared any of this with guidance other than they know I'm doing cheek to cheek. And so for them, it's just a way to diffuse situations instead of having to send them constantly to guidance to deal with stuff. But again, I'm getting reading conferences done and that. So anyway, that's my culture.
Can you go back to the choices they get when they first come in?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Just check. And which one is the dark place again?
That's where,
This is dark place.
well, I don't, yeah.
Oh, dark place.
Oh, they're saying like it's definitely, I don't even talk to that one. That one is, it's bad, right? And I wait to see that they're multiple times, and then eventually I'll turn that into guidance. And we've even gone as far to, so we've got a kid who's been on there twice. So now we're thinking we need a place for them to unload. So we're thinking we're gonna get like a plastic fake toilet, like a mini one, because you can unload whatever, middle school more, they'd have fun.
They would have fun.
That they could write on, especially for that kid, write it in there, let's flush that mess away. Like if that's what it's gonna, get it out of your system, write it all down, maybe that's all that you need. You don't wanna talk to us, that's fine. But it also give another outlet for kids, because a lot of them are on the border, they'll put their number right on the struggling and cheek to cheek, and I'll go up to them like, look, you're right on the border, so do you wanna talk to me or not? And they're like, no, I'm just struggling, but it's just really, really bad, but I don't want to. So we also wanna just give that opportunity, okay, go flush it in the toilet.
So when you're describing it to kids, like when you introduced it, what was the difference when you were like describing mess, struggling, and dark place? What
Yeah.
did you kind of tell them was the difference between those three?
I told him, I said, I know you guys are, you know, up and down and things of that nature. I said, struggling could be, maybe it's just the day, the friend, you woke up in a bad mood. You see that you aren't focused. You see that you're not able to solely get through all your classes, but it's typical. I'll get through it. It's not something that I need help with. And then the dark place, right? That is, you are struggling beyond, and you might need to talk in the future, but right now you just want to be acknowledged. Like, if I don't want to be messed with, this is why. And they know when I presented, I said, look, I know this first couple weeks you guys are going to watch who walks up there, you know, and place their number. I said, but all I need you to worry about is your number. If 4 is in a dark place, only 4 and I need to worry that 4 is in the dark place. You need to be thinking about them and whoever number 4 is. That's what you could be doing to help that student, not worry about 4 is always up there. Why is number 4 always up there? You know, so there hasn't been any of that. And I do it to where it's cycling. Hey, this group, you guys go make sure you get your book and what you need. This group, get out your homework or whatever I need to collect it. This group, come up here and do your numbers. So they don't have time to really pay attention to anybody. They can hardly keep up with their number, let alone worrying about somebody else's. So they're not even, but they're starting to respect it and realize this is the time.
If you were super worried about like confidentiality,
Sure.
you could do something digitally so that you had, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that you had the list.
Sure.
Something super easy, quick,
Mhm.
like either a Mentimeter or even a Google form would be something super quick that they could do as that check-in.
I've seen it to where like the post-it notes are up there and their name is behind it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
just sort like a certain place, hey, if we're struggling, you need a cheek or dark place. That's where your post-it notes. The rest, who cares? I just do that because you like to share that you're awesome, you know, or whatever. But and I've seen, especially yesterday, there were one class. There was a whole group. There were only like 2 in the grade. A lot of and a lot more were struggling. And even the class was like, "What is it?" And I'm like, "It's the middle of the week. We're exhausted. Like we're all struggling." And so that was enough, you know, explanation that any of us could be there.
I think that's good though, that other people see that because
Yeah, there's a shift.
they see that other people are having kind of a day right now too.
Yeah, like
There's
what's going on?
comfort in numbers, even
Yeah.
for nothing else other than it's nice to know
was good.
somebody else's
It was good. And a group of girls who I've struggled reading, because they're, you know, one, I was like, you remind me of my daughter. Like, you roll your eyes. You don't like when I tell you that your answer's wrong. Like, you think you're always right. But yesterday they were like, you're our favorite. I'm like, baby, you've known me for 4 weeks. You may hate me tomorrow. And they're like, no, you care what we're thinking.